Hey YouTube, welcome back. Nice to have you with us. And today we're talking about an emergency fund. What is an emergency fund? Well, an emergency fund is exactly that, what you just heard. It's what we put aside for an emergency. And we want to talk about all that that means. All right. So, did you know that not having an emergency fund can actually cost you money? Yes. If you don't have an emergency fund, when something comes up that you're not ready for, it will actually cost you money. So the first thing we need to figure out is, what is an emergency for you? What is that word, emergency? Yeah, for some people, having less than 2 cases of beer in the fridge is a national emergency. That's not what we're talking about. No, an emergency fund is not your place from where you borrow money to go take the pretty lady out for dinner on the weekend, right? Or if you want to go away for the weekend, you say, oh, I'll just take it out of my emergency fund because we need a break and I'll put it back there on payday. Yeah, never happens. You always forget to put the money back in. So don't be using your emergency fund for something like that. Hey, it's Brad. Welcome back to Brad's Bread and Butter. Nice to have you with us again today. Thank you to those of you that have subscribed. And if you haven't, please do so. Hit the like button. It really helps us out. And if you hit the little bell, you'll know when we put out a new video. And leave a comment. We'd like to know what you think, what your something you want to know more about or something you didn't understand. Or if you just have a question, please, we'll do our best. So thank you to all of you that have done that. All right. How much money do we need to have in our emergency fund? Well, basically everybody says that you should have at least $1,000 in there. But ideally what we would say is that you should have between 2 to 6 months of your expenses so that if something happens, you're not starving to death, okay? Even more ideally, we say that if you had between 2 to 6 months of your income would even be better. So again, that takes time to do, and you're going to see that, but start somewhere, okay? That's what we're trying to talk about today. So what do you do with your emergency fund, and where do you keep it? These are two very important questions. So my grandmother used to keep her emergency fund in a shoebox in the closet. Yeah, yes, not the most safe place. And it didn't grow at all, right? Especially when I figured out where it was. And sometimes her emergency fund was a little short. Yes, I was a naughty boy. Yeah. So let's look at what an emergency is. There are two kinds of major risks that you are exposed to every day when you wake up. The first risk is that you live too short. Yes, you croak. So we address that usually by having life insurance. And I hope you have, especially if you have young kids, I hope you have some life insurance. Now, this risk really is we are protecting our family, not us, okay? So you live too short, you need to have some life insurance, and that's what protects your family, not you, okay? The second risk is you live too long, okay? The opposite of living too short, okay? And so we address this risk by different investment vehicles to make sure we have enough money to live our life after we stop working, okay? So two risks, life too short or life too long. All right, those are the two big ones. But there's a third risk, and that's what we're talking about today, okay? Which it's not as severe as the first one, the risk to die prematurely, but it happens a lot more often, sadly, and it's the risk of an emergency. An emergency is something that you don't qualify as normal living to use your money from your retirement account, but it's not as severe as passing away. So this is the step sort of right before you croak, or if something pretty serious happens, but you didn't die, okay? So in order to address the risk of living too short, most people have life insurance. In order to address the risk of living too long, most people have an RSP, a Registered Retirement Savings Plan. All right. Because this shoebox of my grandmother doesn't really work anymore, I think the best way to start building your emergency fund is on the banks. Now, wait a minute. You said on the banks, not in the banks? That is correct. And we've already done a little video about that, but just to remind you, okay? So please don't run and deposit your money in the bank for your emergency fund. What I do is I have what's called a TFSA, tax-free savings account. And by the way, that's in WealthSimple. In the link below, you'll find a link, that you can sign up for a WealthSimple account for you. By the way, you get 2 free stocks. But it's a great place to keep your emergency fund. One is you can put stocks and crypto in there, but also an emergency fund is sometimes you need your money quickly. And I know a lot of people will say, well, I have my emergency fund with my investor. Well, then the temptation is, oh, I got to call him. We got to sign paperwork to get it out. And it takes a lot. And therefore, it's not really that emergency fund to get at quickly. But with WealthSimple, couple clicks of the mouse, and you can have your own money. So again, very liquid, and that's why we like WealthSimple. All right, so in this TFSA then, I start to deposit as much or as little as you can. But the thing is, you need to try and make a plan to either do it weekly or monthly. And when you start to get your emergency fund going, it's addictive. You think, okay, I can get my money in there this month, and it starts to build, okay? Now, in that, we are going to put our stocks of Canadian banks. No, that's what we meant. So not in the bank, but on the bank, right? So did you know that it's pretty hard for a bank to go bankrupt? Usually the government steps in, so it's pretty safe. And not only that, when you buy a bank stock, so let's say you buy it for $100 and it goes up to 102, you got growth there. But usually the banks are good enough that they actually pay a dividend. And so then you'll get 1 or 3 or 4% of the dividend as well. So you're getting like a double whammy there when you buy the bank stock. So that's why we like bank stocks. They're very secure, and you can deposit your money there instead of in grandma's shoebox. All right, so that's a good thing. So, but as you know, I am not a financial advisor. I don't have a license, so please do your own research. This is only for entertainment purposes. All right, so it's very important to have your emergency fund. It's also very important to make sure your emergency fund grows. But I don't think it's what's important in case you carry a balance on your Visa or MasterCard. So, all right, now you're getting a little personal here. All right, here's what I don't want you to do. Don't go and use your credit card to put money in your emergency fund, because the interest on a credit card is much higher than you will get from the dividends or your bank stocks, okay? So this is a tricky balance. You need to pay down your debt, but at the same time, you need to get your emergency fund in, because what we watch all the time is if you don't have an emergency fund and something comes up, people put it on their credit card. So this is an important balance that we want you to try and understand, is that as you get your emergency fund, you don't need to touch your credit card. But like I say, don't go and put money on your credit card in order to fund your emergency fund, okay? So try and figure that out the best way that we can. And again, that's why we say that bank stocks are better in your WealthSimple account than your credit card. Okay, so please do your own research, build your emergency fund, which suits you best, and buy some safe stocks with dividends for growth. As you know, it's very important to have a spare tire in your car. Not because anybody ever plans to have a flat tire, but just in case, you have a flat tire in the middle of the night, you can get out, change your tire, and you get home at least safely, all right? So the problem is, if you have a car, it's very important to have that spare tire. But don't go out and buy the tire before you have the car. And that's kind of the balance that we're trying to find between credit cards and an emergency fund. All right, so if an emergency fund brings you backwards financially, what's the purpose of having the emergency fund? So try and find that balance, and you'll be amazed that as you start to get some money in your WealthSimple account for your emergency, then you don't have to touch the credit card. That's the main thing for today. So, hey, YouTube, leave us a comment of how you're doing with your emergency fund. Maybe you got some other great ideas. We'd love to hear. what you're doing for your emergency fund, and have you had to use it? Yeah, simple stories helps everybody out. So thanks YouTube for being with us, and as always, keep it in the green and have a great day.